Russian warships face an unprecedented crisis at the port of Tartus as Syria's new government denies them access to their only Mediterranean naval facility. Following the overthrow of Bashar al-Assad's regime in December 2024, multiple Russian vessels, including Alexander Otrakovsky and Sparta II, have been stranded offshore since January 5, 2025. The situation has become particularly critical as these ships experience severe technical problems, including failing water desalination systems and leaking fuel tanks. Meanwhile, the port itself has become a bottleneck for Russian military assets, with satellite imagery revealing over 100 trucks loaded with equipment and dismantled air defense radar systems awaiting evacuation. The desperate circumstances have forced Russian forces to take extreme measures, including burning non-operational military vehicles that cannot be transported. This developing crisis represents a significant shift in Russia's naval capabilities in the Mediterranean region and marks a dramatic turning point in Syrian-Russian military relations.
The Soviet Union established its naval presence at the port of Tartus in 1971,
marking the beginning of a strategic foothold in the Mediterranean Sea. The facility initially served as a support point for the Soviet Navy's 5th Operational Squadron, which Moscow positioned as a counterbalance to the US 6th Fleet headquartered in Italy. In 1977, the Soviet Navy consolidated its Mediterranean assets by transferring ships and property from Egyptian bases to Tartus, establishing the 229th Naval and Estuary Vessel Support Division. Furthermore, Moscow upgraded the facility to the 720th Material Technical Support Point in 1984. The base remained relatively quiet after the Soviet Union's collapse until Russia began expanding its presence in 2012. The port of Tartus plays a critical role in Russian naval operations within the Mediterranean, serving as a linchpin for both logistical support and strategic military influence. As Russia's only repair and replenishment hub in the region, it provides essential services to its fleet, allowing vessels to undergo maintenance and resupply without the need to return to Black Sea ports. This capability enables Russian warships, including nuclear-powered vessels, to sustain extended deployments in the Mediterranean, thereby enhancing their operational range and effectiveness. The Tartus facility has been instrumental in bolstering Russia's regional influence, particularly through its contributions to military operations in Syria. From this base, Russian naval forces have launched precision-caliber missile strikes against ground targets, playing a decisive role in supporting the Syrian government during the conflict. Furthermore, the base enhances Russia's ability to project power and maintain a credible maritime presence against NATO forces. By integrating advanced air defenses with long-range cruise missile capabilities, Tartus is a cornerstone of Russia's conventional maritime deterrence in the Mediterranean. Russia's relationship with Syria under the Assad regime has been marked by several significant contracts that solidified their strategic partnership. In 2005, Russia forgave 73% of Syria's $13.4 billion debt inherited from the Soviet era, underscoring Moscow's commitment to maintaining close ties with Damascus. Further deepening this cooperation, a 49-year lease agreement was signed in 2017, granting Russia expanded access to its naval base in Tartus. In the same year, an accord was reached that provided sovereign jurisdiction and immunity for Russian personnel operating in Syria, ensuring legal protections and facilitating broader military activities in the region. The 2017 agreement proved particularly significant as it authorized Russia to maintain nuclear vessels at the facility and granted Russian personnel and equipment full immunity from Syrian jurisdiction. Consequently, Russia announced the formation of a permanent grouping at both Tartus and Khmeimim facilities by late 2017. The base has been instrumental in projecting Russian influence beyond the Mediterranean. Through Tartus, Russia has maintained its military presence in the Middle East and supported operations across Africa. Moreover, the facility has served as a crucial logistical hub for transporting personnel, equipment, and supplies to regions where Russian forces operate. The sudden collapse of Bashar al-Assad's regime in December 2024 triggered an unprecedented crisis at Syria's strategic Mediterranean port of Tartus, fundamentally altering the regional military dynamics. The departure of Assad's government has resulted in a complete realignment of Russian military capabilities in the Mediterranean.
Satellite imagery reveals that Russian naval vessels are no longer present at their traditional berths in Tartus.
Specifically, The base has witnessed the destruction of Syrian Navy missile boats at Latakia, with multiple Osa-class vessels, previously armed with SS-N2C Styx surface-to-surface missiles, now lying submerged. The current situation has escalated into a tense maritime standoff, with Russian naval activity facing significant disruptions. The military transport ship Sparta II remains stranded in neutral waters, unable to dock at the port. Meanwhile, other vessels are attempting to navigate the unfolding crisis. The Baltic leader is making its way toward Tartus, while the Lady Maria has changed course and is now heading back toward the Baltic Sea. Additionally, the tanker Ivan Skobelev was most recently tracked near Sicily, reflecting the fragmented and uncertain movements of Russian vessels in the region. The diplomatic standoff has entered a critical stage, with Syrian authorities refusing entry to Russian military transport vessels for 6 consecutive days. This impasse has resulted in substantial operational challenges. Over 100 trucks carrying military equipment remain stranded at the port, while advanced air defense systems, including the S-400, are stationed on pier, unable to be deployed effectively. Furthermore, evacuation options for Russian personnel and resources are now largely confined to operations at Khmeimim Air Base, further complicating logistical and strategic planning. The Russian government has attempted to salvage its position through diplomatic channels. However, the new Syrian leadership maintains firm control over port access decisions. The situation has become increasingly complex as Ukraine's foreign minister conducted a diplomatic visit to Damascus, suggesting alignment between Ukrainian and new Syrian government perspectives regarding Russian military presence. The crisis has effectively eliminated Russia's submarine presence in the Mediterranean for the first time since 2013. This development represents a significant shift in regional naval capabilities, as no Russian submarine has accessed Tartus since December 3, 2024. The absence of port access has rendered sustained submarine presence in the Mediterranean untenable, given that conventional submarines typically require frequent port calls for maintenance and resupply. Several Russian naval vessels remain anchored off the Syrian coast, a striking indication of the deepening crisis at the port of Tartus. Positioned approximately 13 kilometers offshore, these ships represent a significant portion of Russia's strategic maritime assets in the region. Among the stranded vessels are 2 guided missile frigates, the cargo ship Sparta and the large landing ships Ivan Gren and Alexander Otrakovsky. Their inability to dock reflects the broader logistical and diplomatic challenges currently faced by Russian operations in Syria. The port facility itself has become a critical bottleneck, with substantial military assets awaiting evacuation or redeployment. Key air defense systems have been dismantled, leaving radar systems out of commission and impacting Russia's ability to maintain robust aerial surveillance. On the ground, over 100 trucks loaded with military equipment are staged for removal, but their transport remains stalled, creating a backlog of critical supplies. Additionally, non-operational military vehicles at the site have reportedly been ordered for destruction, highlighting the severity of the impasse. This situation underscores the mounting logistical strain and strategic vulnerability Russia faces in maintaining its presence in the region. The stranded vessels are grappling with serious operational challenges that undermine their effectiveness. Among them, Alexander Otrakovsky has experienced critical technical failures. These issues include a malfunctioning water desalination system, which limits the crew's access to fresh water, and leaks in both the second and third fuel tanks, jeopardizing the ship's fuel efficiency and overall readiness. Accordingly, the cargo ship Sparta has experienced its own set of problems, straight away affecting its main engine's fuel pipe system. These technical difficulties have undeniably complicated the evacuation efforts, forcing the vessels to remain in a holding pattern while Moscow deliberates on its next course of action. The situation is further exacerbated by the absence of ships currently docked at the port to facilitate the loading of military assets. Certainly, this has created a logistical bottleneck, as the Russian crew attempts to address these mechanical issues while drifting in open waters. The technical challenges have prompted desperate measures, including the ordered destruction of non-operational military vehicles requiring repairs. This decision reflects the growing concern over leaving functional equipment behind during the hasty withdrawal process. Efforts to address the ongoing crisis at the port of Tartus have been met with repeated failures, as diplomatic negotiations to secure access for Russian vessels remain at an impasse. Russian officials,
faced with mounting logistical and operational challenges, have struggled to overcome the firm resistance posed by Syria's new leadership.
despite multiple attempts, no progress has been made, underlining the growing complexity and tension surrounding the situation.
Negotiations have repeatedly broken down,
with Syrian authorities adopting an increasingly uncompromising stance. A notable failure occurred on January 9, 2025, when Rear Admiral Valery Vladimirovich Varfolomeyev, sent to negotiate port access, was denied participation in the discussions altogether. This outright rejection signaled a stark shift in Syria's approach to its long-standing ally. Earlier, on January the 5th, an initial request for access to the port was formally denied, while a follow-up request on January 10th received no response, further exacerbating the deadlock. The extended standoff has also created significant logistical challenges for the stranded fleet. Alexander Otrakovsky, one of the large landing ships in the area, has been severely impacted by technical failures.
its water desalination plant is no longer functional,
depriving the crew of fresh water.
Multiple fuel tanks also developed leaks,
further compromising the vessel's operational capacity.
Broader logistical concerns compound these challenges,
as over 100 trucks loaded with military equipment remain stranded at the port, and air defense systems, including radar units, have been dismantled but cannot be transported. The deteriorating situation has forced Russian commanders to take drastic measures to prevent sensitive equipment from falling into opposition hands. Non-operational military hardware has been marked for destruction, reflecting the dire circumstances and the lack of viable alternatives for evacuation. This unfolding crisis not only highlights the immediate operational difficulties faced by Russia, but also underscores the strained diplomatic relations with Syria's evolving leadership. Despite these setbacks, Moscow has begun exploring different evacuation strategies. The Russian military has intensified air operations through the Khmeimim airbase, utilizing this facility to withdraw personnel and smaller assets.
Nevertheless,
this alternative presents its challenges, as the airbase's capacity limits the scope of equipment that can be transported. The search for solutions has led to broader diplomatic outreach. On December 9th, Russia approached Turkey for assistance in safely evacuating its troops from Syria. This development underscores the increasing desperation of Russian forces to secure viable evacuation routes. The logistical strain has been further complicated by the need to coordinate movements through various territories now controlled by different factions. The evacuation of approximately 7,500 troops and associated military hardware requires extensive planning and negotiations with multiple groups. Ultimately, the closure of Turkish straits to military vessels, implemented following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, has significantly restricted maritime evacuation options. Satellite imagery reveals an extensive accumulation of Russian military assets at the port of Tartus,
marking a critical phase in Moscow's hasty withdrawal attempts.
The port's quaysides have become increasingly congested with equipment awaiting evacuation. A detailed assessment of the stranded military assets at Tartus reveals several critical statuses. The S-400 air defense systems have been partially dismantled, reducing their operational readiness. The 91-6E radar system is prepared for transport but remains on site, awaiting evacuation. Additionally, over 100 trucks loaded with ground equipment are staged at the port, unable to proceed due to access restrictions. A Ka-52 attack helicopter has been dismantled, further indicating the decommissioning of key aerial assets. At Khmeimim Air Base, 2 AN-124 heavy transport aircraft are positioned with their nose cones raised, ready for equipment loading. Despite this readiness, the missile systems at Tartus no longer maintain their usual combat-ready posture, reflecting the significant operational challenges faced amid the current diplomatic impasse. Russian commanders have established stringent protocols to manage the stranded equipment at Tartus, reflecting the urgency of the situation. Military leadership has directed the immediate destruction of vehicles deemed irreparable, ensuring they cannot be repurposed or captured. Equipment that cannot be evacuated has been ordered to be burned to prevent its use by adversaries. Meanwhile, operational air defense systems have been prioritized for evacuation, emphasizing their critical importance to Russia's regional military strategy. Currently, these destruction protocols aim to prevent sensitive military technology from falling into opposition hands. The implementation of these measures has become increasingly urgent as access to the port remains restricted. Moscow has undertaken various strategies to recover its critical military assets, focusing on alternative solutions to the crisis at Tartus. According to intelligence reports, one option under consideration is the transfer of military equipment to Libya. This approach offers several strategic benefits, including leveraging Russia's established military presence in Libya and utilizing the country's strategic location to maintain influence across the Mediterranean. Additionally, relocating the equipment to Libya could facilitate its integration with existing Russian operations in Africa, further strengthening Moscow's regional footprint. Ultimately, the Russian military has begun utilizing alternative evacuation methods through the Khmeimim Air Base, where heavy transport aircraft continue operations. The presence of two AN-124s and multiple Il-76 aircraft suggests an ongoing airlift operation to salvage smaller, high-priority equipment. The situation at Tartus has prompted Moscow to consider establishing new bases in North Africa. Hence, Italian Defense Minister Guido Crosetto has confirmed that Russia is actively moving resources from its Tartus facility to Libya. This strategic pivot represents a significant shift in Russian military positioning in the Mediterranean region. The diplomatic landscape between Moscow and Damascus has undergone a fundamental transformation as the new Syrian government maintains its firm stance against Russian naval presence at the port of Tartus. The abrupt change in Syrian leadership has prompted Moscow to adopt an unprecedented diplomatic approach. Notwithstanding their previous alliance, Russian state media has rapidly shifted its narrative, transitioning from labeling Syrian opposition forces as terrorists to referring to them as armed opposition. Important to realize that the Russian embassy in Damascus has raised the three-starred flag of Syrian rebel groups, analogous to accepting the new political reality. In terms of diplomatic developments, the new Syrian government has denied Russia access to its military bases, marking a significant setback for Moscow's regional operations. Despite this, embassy operations continue under the new flag, a clear sign of Russia's ongoing presence and engagement with the changing political reality. Meanwhile, negotiations are still underway regarding the recovery of Russian military assets stranded in the region, with Moscow pushing to regain control of its strategic assets. At the same time, Russia's diplomatic recognition appears to be shifting, increasingly aligning with the opposition as it navigates the complexities of Syria's new leadership. The international community has closely monitored these developments, coupled with significant diplomatic initiatives. Ukraine's Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha's diplomatic visit to Damascus underscores the changing dynamics, as both Ukraine and the new Syrian leadership appear aligned in their stance regarding Russian military presence. The unfolding situation carries significant international implications, notably weakening Russia's ability to project power in the Mediterranean. This diminished capacity could reduce Moscow's influence over regional security dynamics, making it more challenging for Russia to maintain its strategic foothold. Additionally, the ongoing crisis has the potential to alter diplomatic alignments in the Middle East, as countries in the region may reassess their relationships with Russia in light of these developments. The port crisis has triggered substantial changes in regional power dynamics. As opposed to maintaining its traditional foothold, Russia faces the prospect of losing its only Mediterranean naval facility. In essence, this development affects several key strategic dimensions. The potential loss of Tartus would have a significant impact on Russia's ability to maintain its military maritime presence in the Mediterranean, hindering its operational reach in the region. Additionally, without access to this crucial naval base, and with the Bosphorus Strait closed, Russia's capacity to project power across the African continent would face major limitations. The situation also raises doubts about Russia's ability to protect its allies through military means, which could strain its relationships with regimes in Libya, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, and Equatorial Guinea, ultimately challenging the strength of its strategic partnerships. The diplomatic fallout extends beyond immediate military concerns. For Russian propaganda, explaining this situation to both domestic audiences and Global South partners presents a complex challenge. The crisis has effectively diminished Moscow's ability to shape political and military dynamics in the region, while potentially strengthening the positions of Turkey and Israel. Moscow's diplomatic efforts now focus on securing some form of presence in the region, with or without its traditional Syrian alliance. The Kremlin spokesperson has confirmed that Russian authorities are taking necessary steps to establish a contact in Syria with those capable of ensuring the security of military bases. This represents a significant departure from Russia's previous position as a dominant regional power broker. The loss of access to the port of Tartus has fundamentally altered Russia's naval capabilities in the Mediterranean Sea, marking the most significant reduction in Moscow's maritime presence in the region since before its 2022 invasion of Ukraine. The operational capacity of the Russian Navy's Mediterranean squadron has undergone an unprecedented decline. For the first time in a decade, Russia has no submarines stationed in these waters, marking a significant shift in its naval strategy. The composition of the fleet has also changed dramatically. Previously, the squadron maintained a continuous deployment of submarines, but now there are none present. The number of surface ships has decreased from 10 to 15 vessels to a more limited presence, further reducing Russia's operational reach. Additionally, the support vessels that once ensured a full logistics chain are now facing disrupted operations, further compounding the challenges to Russia's naval capabilities in the Mediterranean. The Russian Navy has been forced to implement substantial operational changes, primarily the closure of the Turkish Straits to Russian warships, combined with the loss of Tartus, has created severe logistical challenges. These circumstances have led to significant operational setbacks, including an inability to sustain extended deployments. The fleet also faces limited repair and maintenance capabilities, which hinders its ability to stay operational for long periods. Additionally, Russia's ability to conduct effective surveillance operations has been severely restricted, further complicating its presence and influence in the region. The situation has likewise affected Russia's broader military logistics. The Khmeimim airbase, once crucial for transferring forces to Africa, can no longer effectively support these operations.
Therefore, Moscow's ability to project power across the Mediterranean and into Africa faces substantial constraints.
The strategic implications extend beyond immediate naval operations. Generally, Russia's conventional deterrence strategy in the Mediterranean relied on combining air defenses with cruise missile-equipped ships. Altogether, this created what military analysts termed A2AD bubbles, zones designed to deny access to potential adversaries. The current situation has forced Russia to make several critical adjustments to its defense posture. Without access to Tartus, its capacity to sustain a dependable military presence in the eastern Mediterranean has been drastically reduced. Additionally, the loss of integrated air defense systems, including the S-400 and S-300 complexes, has significantly weakened Russia's ability to protect its remaining naval assets in the region. Moreover, the absence of Russia's submarine presence in the Mediterranean has diminished its capacity for long-term surveillance and deterrence operations, undermining its strategic depth in the area. The military impact extends to Russia's global operations. Otherwise, routine deployments now face significant challenges, as the Russian Navy must operate without a dedicated maintenance and supply hub in the Mediterranean. This situation has impacted several key aspects of naval operations.
Extended maritime missions now require alternative support arrangements,
as traditional resources are no longer available. Surveillance capabilities have been significantly reduced, limiting Russia's ability to monitor developments in the region effectively. Additionally, the ability to project power into the Middle East faces new constraints,
making it more difficult for Russia to exert influence in this strategically important area.
The situation has ultimately forced Moscow to consider alternative strategies. Military analysts note that Russia may seek to establish new bases in Libya or Sudan, though these locations lack the infrastructure and formal agreements that made Tartus invaluable. Similarly, the Russian Navy's ability to support operations in Syria and project power into the Mediterranean will remain significantly compromised without access to permanent facilities. The strategic setback has broader implications for Russia's naval modernization efforts. The loss of Tartus affects not only current operations, but also long-term plans for maintaining a modern naval presence in the Mediterranean. This development represents a significant shift in regional military balance,
particularly affecting Russia's ability to challenge NATO's southern flank. The economic ramifications of losing access to the port of Tartus extend far beyond military considerations,
markedly affecting both Russian and Syrian financial interests. The crisis has triggered a cascade of economic challenges that threaten billions in investments and future development plans. The financial impact on Russia's naval operations has been severe, with substantial losses affecting various sectors. The United Shipbuilding Company, Russia's state-owned naval construction enterprise, faces catastrophic financial setbacks. This is further exacerbated by massive debt servicing obligations, which are consuming an increasing portion of military spending. Additionally, Russia's loss of access to Western technologies has crippled its shipbuilding capabilities, while unreliable Chinese replacement components have hindered effective vessel maintenance. Trade relations between Moscow and Damascus have also sharply deteriorated, with bilateral commerce dropping from $1 billion in 2010 to just $198 million in 2020. This decline is primarily driven by broader economic challenges in Syria, where the economy contracted by 84% between 2010 and 2023. In terms of economic indicators, Syria's GDP in 2022 stood at $63 billion, comparable to that of smaller nations, while exports fell from $84 billion in 2010 to $8 billion in 2021. Similarly, imports decreased significantly from $22.7 billion in 2010 to $6.5 billion in 2021. Russian investments in Syrian infrastructure now face uncertain futures. The Kremlin had planned 40 major investment projects, focusing on areas such as energy sector development, transportation infrastructure, housing reconstruction, and the revitalization of industrial facilities. However, with Syria's reconstruction estimated to cost between $400 to $500 billion over the next 10 to 15 years, Russia's ability to actively participate in these initiatives has been severely hindered by the ongoing crisis and international sanctions. The Russian military faces unprecedented resource allocation challenges. The competition between different armed services over spending has intensified, affecting naval development plans. These difficulties are exacerbated by several factors. First, Moscow's increased military spending, announced in 2023, appears primarily directed towards servicing the defense industry's massive debt. Soon thereafter, the effects of sanctions became more pronounced, particularly in the shipbuilding sector, where the industry struggles to replace everything from machine tools to specialized ship lighting. The financial strain also impacts Syria's government resources. The central bank holds around $200 million in cash reserves, alongside 26 tons of gold, which are valued at approximately $2 billion. These figures fall significantly below the $18.5 billion in reserves estimated in 2010. The humanitarian situation has deteriorated correspondingly, with over 90% of Syria's 23 million people now living below the poverty line. The resource allocation crisis has prompted desperate measures. Russian companies previously held first priority for reconstruction contracts, with exclusive rights to extract oil and gas from Assad-controlled areas secured in January 2018. These agreements now face uncertainty, as does Russia's broader strategy for maintaining its economic presence in the region. The impact on Russia's defense industry has been especially harsh. The state-owned United Shipbuilding Company is facing numerous challenges, including structural neglect in its facilities, shortages of parts and subassemblies, and a high demand for vessel modernization. The situation has forced Moscow to consider alternative strategies for maintaining its Mediterranean presence. Italian Defense Minister Guido Crosetto has confirmed that Russia is actively relocating resources from Tartus to Libya, representing a significant shift in regional economic investment patterns. Russia's loss of access to the Tartus port marks a significant turning point in Mediterranean naval dynamics. This crisis has severely weakened Moscow's regional influence, from submarine operations to air defense systems. With technical failures aboard stranded vessels and Syria's new government's firm stance, Russian forces face an unprecedented challenge. Can Russia find alternative solutions to maintain its military presence in the Mediterranean, or will this represent a major decline in its influence? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this video interesting, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.